So I make patterns because I can never remember from one day to the next what I did. This pattern only really makes any sense to me, but I'll try and explain it loosely based on the finger bonnet that I've made here. I cast on 14 down here, and then I knitted 2, I purled 2, I knitted 2, purled 2, and so on. Obviously, if there's like 96 stitches, I would not draw all of these in. I would just draw the beginning and the end so that I would understand where I was. I tend to use my body to measure things and not rulers, because I don't carry rulers around with my knitting generally. I just have my wool and my needles. So when I made bonnets, I made it twice this before I started to cast off. This is my cast off illustration. Knitted 1, then these 2 were together. Knitted, and I purled 1, knitted 1, those together. Obviously, this is not how I would do an adult bonnet, because these are, I would cast off with more stitches in between. Roughly 9 or 8 or 7, depending on the thickness of the wool. Then I would do the return row, and this row here I'd once again cast off. The row that follows the casting off would be, as soon as I saw the row before where the cast off was, I would do it next to it. So it became logical, and so on until I had a few stitches remaining, and I pulled the wool through that. So this would be a rough pattern. As I said, basically they would only make any sense to me, but at least I knew what I was doing. Also, if I made a pattern like this, what I call the prototype, when I make a pattern and then when I've finished it and I see something that I would like to change, in this case I would definitely change the stitches so that I did not have a rib that only had 1 where the sew up is and then 2 there. I would change it so that this would be with 2, so they would match all the other ones. So looking at that, I'd go back to my pattern and I would add on a knit stitch here, so that when I sewed it up, when you look at it from this side, you will see 4, but when you fold over this, you would see 2 there. Because my bonnets, this part was always very long, and when it was folded up, it usually folded up to the part where the casting off was starting, so you would not see that there were actually 4 rows there. You'd only see that. So I would, of course, modify my pattern accordingly, so that my basic prototype with each experimental one would change. And then, of course, once I got a prototype, I would just reproduce it. And I would not change this part when I made it larger or smaller according to the wool I'd have. I would change this area here as the amount of stitches. So I could go from like 90 whatever, could add more or less stitches, but I would always make sure that this part was the same. So there we go, rough pattern.